it's also very dynamic. There's been so many changes so far, even on a week-to-week basis. Of late, we've learned that PEZA has granted many different benefits to our healthcare BPO industry, or the BPO industry, or particularly or specifically PEZA registered entities. So there's a lot of things to PEZA has been trying to help us. As you know, a couple of weeks back, we had DG Plaza with us, and she talked a little bit about these things. So I think these have been formalized in the board, and we'll share the resolutions much later as soon as we receive them. So members and friends, we open today's session. It's a little bit of a continuation of last week's conversation where we had different teams who support and organizations who support the healthcare BPO industry, how we see the new normal, how things will look like going forward. And I think we're just about to go through our first week of modified ECQ in Manila and Cebu, and then for our other provinces, maybe they're going through GCQ. So it'll be interesting to see how this develops and how our organizations that support our industry are looking at it, how they are preparing for it, how have they organized to support, and what kind of challenges and issues we will see in the forefront, whether it's people, mental health, working from home for a long period of time, changes in the workplace or work structure in many companies. So we're going to have a continuation of that conversation. We have folks with us. I'd like to just take the opportunity to introduce a lady who's been with the industry for quite some time. Everyone knows her. She said she's a pioneer. In earlier conversations, we said you were pioneers. So not to date themselves, but they started working when they were very young. So I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Heidi. Heidi has been a pillar of the organization for quite some time, really dating from the start of the BPO industry. She spent a lot of time. She's now Chief HR Officer of Cytel, and has been doing this HR or human resource work not only in operations, but with HR shared services, talent acquisition, the different facets that contribute to the human capital function. So I'd like to turn it over now to Heidi to open the to carry on with the session, to moderate our session. Heidi.
Thank you very much, Roger. Good morning, HIMAP. I hope everyone is having an amazing week. There is an adage that says necessity is the mother of invention. And the recent events, I believe, once again proved the enduring truth in that old adage. I remember having repeated discussions in multiple fora about the viability of work at home model in the Philippine BPO space. And then the resounding belief then was that we weren't ready, that remote work was not aligned to the Filipino culture, security concerns on data privacy, stability of internet connection, etc., etc. And then the ECQ was announced. Lo and behold, weeks, if not days, companies pivoted to the work from home model. 1.5 months into ECQ, BPO companies report that they have shifted anywhere between 10% to 100% of their workforce to the remote work model. Majority of the same companies project that this model will continue even after ECQ. So then the overall theme is clear. There is no going back. The COVID-19 crisis is not only disruptive to every company, but it has created a big reset. Rapid changes taking place will be long-lasting for years to come. So how big an impact does this pandemic really have on the world of work? And you can see that on the screen now. So in its April 2020 report, the ILO gave estimates and analysis on the impact of the virus on the world of work. Their estimates show workplace closures have increased rapidly within weeks of the pandemic. To date, 81% of the global workforce operate in countries with mandatory or recommended closures. The pandemic is also affecting a global workforce of 3.3 billion, where the most affected industries are those from the arts, entertainment, recreation, transportation, accommodation, and food services. Bachi, I think we lost the uh, screen, unless that's just on my part.
We can still see it.
Okay, so I'll just continue for as long as you can see it. The pandemic is, as I said, is affecting a global workforce of 3.3 billion, and in the Philippines, it is expected that the unemployment rate would even go up to as high as 15% by the end of this year. So, what will the new normal be like? How will this look like after quarantine? In an Ateneo Cord article entitled After COVID-19 Work Life Post Quarantine, the author listed 7 elements that can become the new standard in the world of work after the quarantine. These are summed up in the acronym REBUILD, REBULD. Rebuild, and I like it very much. It really resounded simply because of the hopeful tone it provides. So R stands for remote work. Given the speed by which everyone migrated to remote work, many are still coming to terms with its impact on both work and personal life. Organizations must quickly adapt our policies and practices to cater to not only diverse but dispersed workforce. This becomes even more challenging with the Filipino workforce who are culturally social and collectivist. E stands for employee support. In the new reality where work-life integration has taken on a very literal meaning, the kind of support that will be meaningful for our associates and their families will need to be re-examined. A recent study by Mercer showed that 80% of the employers are concerned about declining productivity in the new remote model. In this new normal, keeping employees healthy, productive, and engaged in spite of dissipatedness due to remote work takes a front seat. B stands for business contingency. Many of us have business continuity plans in place. But how many of us have BCPs that included public health emergencies and pandemics? Moving forward, this becomes an imperative. Activities like hand washing, sanitation, social distancing protocols to reduce risk of health issues must be incorporated in the plans. U stands for upskilling on technology. While BPO companies are more IT enabled than the other industries, many of us were also caught off guard and had to scramble our full transition into becoming digital immigrants. In Saitel, for example, a major recruitment channel for us is Saitel Academy, contributing between 30 to 60% of successful hires. The one-week migration from a full in-center face-to-face learning model to a 100% remote and virtual model was more challenging for our trainers who had to undergo crash courses on digital learning and virtual facilitation than it was for the trainees. I stands for infrastructure or IT infrastructure. The quarantine, of course, sorry, the quarantine not only highlights our dependency on technology to keep business going, but also how we need to bump up our technology infrastructure and its readiness in crisis situation. In a country where internet speed is reported to be one of the slowest in Asia, organizational efficiency and productivity will depend on strength and stability of the IT infrastructure supporting the dispersed workforce. L is for leadership adaptiveness. Leaders in the new normal, where there may be combination of remote and in-center work, will require leadership agility and adaptiveness, as these are two different worlds requiring different approaches. Leaders' ability to trust, collaborate, and to provide timely and authentic communication across different channels will be very critical. D, the last one, stands for design thinking for the future. While it is certain that the world of work has changed, it is still uncertain how exactly the new normal will look like. Just like what Roger said earlier, week on week there are changes. Thus, organizations must have their eyes set on designing structures and systems that remain agile to changing circumstances. Going forward, we have to make sure that all our programs, designs, and people are designed for resiliency, with emphasis on designed for resiliency. With these new norms upon us, how are the industries and functions supporting our industry adjusting? We are fortunate to have with us this afternoon two experts in their respective fields. I really am looking forward to moderating this panel because rarely do I see these two fields front and center together in one forum: HR and real estate. So, hearts and minds face to face with what's physical and tangible. So let me introduce our panelists. First is Vida Candida S. Archaga. Probably you didn't know that she had the second name. No, sorry about that, Vida. She's the president and CEO of Center for Research, Education, and Training. She's also concurrently an HR consultant for PayPal Philippines. She's a certified LIFO coach since 2009, and she is actually also a director of the CCAP HR Council. So kasama ko yan sa HR Council. She is an accomplished HR professional with a wealth of experience in different facets of HR and has led transformation efforts across different organizations and industries. So she has a master's in industrial relations in HR from the University of the Philippines School of Labor and Industrial Relations, or SOLAIR, and also has taken her undergrad, Bachelor of Science in Communications major in journalism from the same university. Vida, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Our second panelist is none other than Mr. Philip Anunuevo, the Executive Director for Commercial Leasing of Lichu Property Consultants. Philip has accumulated close to 23 years of experience in the Philippines advising tenants, property owners, and investors. He has concluded more than 700,000 square meters of lease renewal, and lease restructuring of office space. Philip was employed with JLL from January 2009 to September 2014, and with Colliers from 1996 to 2008. He held senior positions in the commercial brokerage department of both companies, managing key clients. Philip graduated from the Ateneo de Manila University and attended the Management Development Program at the Asian Institute of Management. Welcome, Philip.
Thank you. Thank you, Heidi.
So let's get this party started. Vida, As I shared earlier, rarely do we see HR and real estate, front and center. Would like to hear your perspective first, please, Vida.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, as I was guided by the program organizers, yeah. So I think for this part, I'll have to speak first about why I'm here and what do I bring, okay, to the table or to for our members and our friends. Yeah. So today I'm wearing four hats actually. We usually hear people say I'm wearing two hats today, but I think I have to explain where I'm coming from. So first, I come here as an industry and HR leader. So I think Heidi has mentioned, and that's self-explanatory. I represent together with Heidi and some of our officers are also online, the CCAP HR Council. So that's an elective post, okay? I'm also wearing here the hat of being a consultant, and that is for PayPal Philippines. And also, as a starting entrepreneur, after I decided in 2018, middle of that year, to leave my full-time corporate employment from my last organization, I put up this small dream company, which I call the Center for Research, Education, Solutions, and Training. So in short, it's CREST. And well, beyond my three hats and deeper than those, I think I'm here because I'm an immensely concerned Filipino citizen. Yeah, so I've had opportunities to go abroad in the past because the family of my husband has petitioned, and I just decided not to leave. I think that whatever I can do in my own little special way can be of very much value for the Philippines. And especially right now during this crisis, I think we need more than our formal affiliations, but deep inside our heart and our conscience, we want to serve and help. So HIMAP is very dear to me as well. Yeah, in my past four organizations, four BPOs, APAC Customer Services in 2006, HGS for almost 8 years, Cognizant as well, and then EXL Service Philippines. We led very big healthcare verticals. So I think that HIMAP is the right place also to speak about my insights. But before I end my short intro, I'd like to also give a disclaimer to everyone that I think even if we're in HIMAP and we're talking about the healthcare industry, especially the BPO, KPO sector, I think that I'm here also to represent every employer and every employee, regardless of industry, because we are all affected right now. So yeah, that's a short, brief intro. Sweet. Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you very much, Vida. And Philip, how about you?
Thank you, Heidi. Is there? Are we going to flash the slides? That okay. I first of all, just to introduce myself, I co-chair the commercial leasing department of V2 Property Consultants. You probably know my colleague Laila Ledonio very well, and some of the people in this panel are very familiar names like Vida, for example, when she was with HGS. I love the engagements I had with HGS because it took me all over the country. Baguio, Iloilo, Davao, every major city in the Philippines I had visited because they were looking for new labor markets. In the past 2 months, we have observed a number of adjustments, which I think both landlords and tenants have to study carefully for us to, for the industry to be able to um, operate efficiently in the next, 6 to 12 months. Of course, we're all hoping that 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 mobility will be restored and things will be, better soon. But we have observed a number of real estate strategies, which I think we should all continue revisiting. So first slide would be swing space. Um, the new normal of social distancing now requires us to seat ourselves farther apart in the workplace. So when companies go back to their buildings, they can only probably deploy 40 or 50% of their workforce there. In the meantime, the rest will continue working from their homes, or possibly in fitted space that they can lease for maybe 12 months. Why only 12 months? We tenants usually sign a lease for for 5 years. It's 12 months, because it's swing space that tides you over that period when social distancing is the norm. After 12 months, we're hoping that things will go back to normal, and tenants will have the choice of returning to their buildings or continuing with with new norms. But over the past 3 or 4 weeks, we have identified landlords with fitted space in their buildings, or some tenants with an excess of space that they can happily lease to companies needing to accommodate those that are displaced by social distancing. So this is one of the solutions that we have been developing for the industry. And then the next slide. Next slide is hub and spoke. So this is a term used to refer to an arrangement wherein a call center would have a brick and mortar hub in different cities. And the spokes would be, in the context of social distancing, agents working from their houses. So as Heidi was explaining earlier, companies have now been able to quickly adapt to a work from home arrangement. So that kind of depicts the hub and spoke model. The hub would be a real office where training is done and where IT support is available. And then the spoke would be the different houses around it. Now, how do we support the industry, or how can we support the healthcare industry in this manner? Well, if you're occupying a big building, and you would end up with an excess of space, then we can help you find tenants to occupy the excess space again for a short period. That way, you may be able to mitigate any unnecessary costs involved in leasing. And then the third strategy, which we could help the industry with, is, so this will be the next slide. Diversification. I mean, diversification is a strategy that we have been employing for more than 15 years now. But especially in these times, I think it is especially important to look at the distribution of our employees, and this applies not just to the BPO industry, but to any company, for that matter. If you have a concentration of employees within Metro Manila, and a lockdown such as what we have experienced occurs again, then it's very difficult to manage that situation. So and before the lockdown, we were LP Property Consultants is working with the IBPAP for getting renewed interest in the next wave cities. In this particular slide, we've identified Clark, and Cebu, and Iloilo as three of the biggest labor markets, especially for the healthcare industry. I mean, Cebu, for example, has been the favorite alternative to Metro Manila for the past 10 years. I think Clark, because of its proximity to Metro Manila, will regain prominence in the next 6 to 12 months, because it's very presentable to investors. There are new hotels coming up. There's a big hospital. It's like Cebu in the beginning, and we at Lichu Property Consultants, we feel that Clark can play the role that Cebu has been playing for the past 10 years. How do we support you in this? We provide you with a lot of information, community information, real estate information. So we sit down with the stakeholders of the company, and we present the potential for you to operate in these cities, and come up with a site selection strategy for your company. So that's my presentation, and I guess we can turn it over back to you again, Heidi.
Thank you very much, Philip. Very interesting, no? Because initially I was thinking that David Lichu and his folks might be very, very worried already, because all indications point to really people preferring to work from home, and businesses and clients of our industry being more open to work from home. And initially, I was thinking that that this might uh, spell slowing down of business for the real estate companies. But based on your presentation, definitely that's not the case. That, hey, a, w- a door might have been closed, but there are several windows that are opening up. So I'm very happy to see that. Now, let me pose my first question to Vida, because as everyone knows, HR has now been trusted front and center in amidst all the craziness that's happening. So Vida, from your experience and based on what you're seeing, how are HR professionals dealing and adapting to this new normal?
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Heidi, for that question. And that is the very reason why I did not prepare a deck or a set of slides for this learning session, because it's too wide for a subject to cover. But yeah, in my attempt to be a responsible panelist here, yeah, I would always share my employee life cycle approach or strategy. Okay, so from an umbrella perspective or macro perspective, yeah, so I always look at the employee life cycle. So let's start with sourcing and branding, talent acquisition. Okay, so I have bullet points here. Yeah, but this is not in our show, right? So yeah, sourcing, assessment, and selection process needs to be revisited because of the new success profiles that will work. Okay, so gone were the days when we used to interview thoroughly our candidates and would look at how can they be a good team player. So how can they be good team players right now in the virtual sense, right? And whereas before we look at other social skills, now we're looking at how can they be autonomous and at the same time be productive as well. How can they be assertive? Because, for example, they have a set of KPIs and goals and metrics, which do not really work well in a work from home environment. So if they don't assert themselves and contribute to the problem solving process, then we will not be able to crack any solution for this. So let me go around the employee life cycle. The employee value proposition also needs to be revisited. So just to share with you, this is not just from my own experience. I went beyond my assignment and also consulted some of our colleagues and fellow leaders in HRCC and also from companies that are known to us. Um, for example, in PayPal, okay, so it's not healthcare, but it's an organization. So depending on how the organization can afford, we can look at all the needs of our employees from physical, safety, health, medical, emotional, learning and development, etc. But
Uh-huh.
has anybody considered, for example, economic needs? So we check on our agents and look at how are they situated being work from home. So if they need some help in establishing their work setup, then there is an assistance program to look at how we can aid them in buying or purchasing office fixture or furniture, a desk or a chair so that they are physically okay when they work. But not all companies can do that. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
the AVP also considers now allowances and subsidies for internet or connectivity, whereas before, it doesn't apply to agents. Okay, before, I think we provide that for our support groups and leaders, but not for the teammate level. So now it has shifted. So from top down, we're looking at what everybody needs. Are you physically okay? Can you be productive? There are locations where the connectivity is somehow a problem. So what do we do? What do we provide? So we provide more assistance for them rather than the what we provide the average teammates. So let me also say that recruiter skills and competencies must be enhanced now. So before we invite our candidates when we do the final offer, for example, or even in the selection process. We make them face a panel, but now they're facing everyone online, and we can just hear their voice or sometimes see their faces. But how good are we in assessing that they're the right fit for the organization's culture or for the business, etc.? So I think it's really a thorough revisit of the entire employee life cycle. And the
Yeah.
EVP is very important. Okay, and also to add to the talent attraction and acquisition phase, uh, now I think more than employee referral program, job portals are our champion channels for sourcing the best candidates for the jobs. So what after we make the offer? So we are now considering how do we onboard people who are away and who are not on site. So we have also started onboarding people who are uh, not on site but are remotely available. Okay, so onboarding, training for fundamentals, culture, and communication skills, and also for process and product training. We've revisited the programs to make
Uh-huh.
sure that, yeah, these programs can be done online. So we look at trainer and trainee ratios because it is no longer the same. Yeah, in a regular classroom where training is trainer led or instructor led, yeah, we can have 20 to 25 people. But what now? I mean, it doesn't work that way now. And even evaluation of training effectiveness is a lot different. Even the content have to be redesigned. So instead of having an 8-hour training per day, we actually zoomed into having 4 hours a day to be effective, and then increase that gradually to 6 hours and look at how effective the training is. Okay, so I go around further. So how do we do performance management now? So there's a team that's looking at productivity right now. How is productivity as compared to, you know, where you're on site and where you're when you are working from home, because that's not going to be the same. So I think that the leaders also, not only HR but the business leaders who we are partnering with, they have to know the ins and outs of the business, what drives the metrics. So maybe before the COVID crisis, we look at attendance and punctuality. Yeah, that's a qualifier for productivity incentives, for example. But now, yeah, schedule adherence would be very important, but punctuality, we have a different way of looking at that now. Discipline management, how do we do it now? We have actually taken a stance to postpone, okay, every case that would lead to terminations because of the crisis. However, investigations and fact-finding continues, and also those cases where the offense or the violation is a threat to the business, then we seek exemption approvals for that so that we can go on with the process. So, do we terminate people during private crisis? Uh, there is actually a mandate that if we can save the decision until we goes more
Mm-hmm.
stable, then I think, yeah, that's a very good decision to make. It's just and fair, but it doesn't mean that we are forgiving or condoning those offenses or violations. Okay, so how do we do L&D right now? Is there promotion happening? Are there movements happening? Yes, there are. Yeah, I think that the crisis should not be a reason or should be a roadblock to this initiative. So, what have we done as a new intervention for this? I myself had created a career counseling intervention so that everybody who's a candidate for promotion or transfer should have a very good assessment of himself or herself before applying for a job that is posted internally in the organization. So, um, what else? I think R&R engagement continues. Yeah, we see engagements that are, yeah, more for promoting sense of belonging for our teammates or our agents and our leaders. Communications are not stopped. They have become more robust. Town halls, skip level meetings, one-on-one coaching have been enhanced because we have to make sure that the connection is there. The strong
Yeah.
connection is there with the employees. Okay,
Yeah.
so I think, Heidi, there will be more specific questions later. So I'll pause for now. But what I'm trying to say here is that by using the employee life cycle approach, we can have customized solution or intervention for every need. Because at every touch point of the employee life cycle, the needs and the motivations of the employee varies to a large extent. So that is the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, and you've made a very good point there, Vida, no? Because and I think that that really just underscores that I think luckily for us in the HR profession, there's not going to be a lack of work, because in this new model, in this new normal, HR needs to play a very pivotal role in getting the organizations ready, their respective organization ready, the policies, the processes, the systems, as well as the employees. So very, very exciting times for the HR practitioner. And I like that you emphasize humanity in HR, no, or humane, making sure that in this particular situation, we need to take into consideration not just is this the right thing to do, but is this the right time to do it as we make decisions in behalf of our organizations. Thank you for that comprehensive perspective, Vida. Now, Philip, I really like what you've presented, and now I'm interested to know, because I'm sure some of the companies that you work with may not be ready or may not be open to these new ways of doing things. So the hub and spoke model or expansion to provincial areas. In what way are you helping them be ready to embrace, or at least to kahit man lang one step into the door of all of these possibilities for them?
Well, we help provide real estate solutions depending on the work arrangement that a particular company decides on. As I mentioned in the introduction, when companies go back to their offices, only maybe 50% or less than 50% can go back to the building because social distancing needs to be observed even within the offices. So we are well, some will deploy, some will keep their staff within their homes, working from homes, and I've heard good feedback from different managers about that arrangement. Some would probably want some of their employees, to go back to the office, and because of the limitation of social distancing, we have been beset with numerous inquiries for fitted space that can be leased for 12 months. Again, these companies don't want to commit long term because
Yeah.
designing an office, whether designing it to the normal density of, for those who are familiar, 5 square meters per person, is something that probably cannot be done right now. So companies will make their commitment shorter. So the concept of swing space, 12 months leasing, 12 months leasing fitted space for 12 months, is something that is becoming very popular. So what we have been doing is we have been talking to landlords to convince them to lease space for 12 months, especially floors that have been previously occupied. This has proven to be difficult in the beginning because any landlord or any developer would want a tenant signing a 5-year lease. It's just easier that way. But we all have to adapt to the situation. We all have to support each other. And the way we pitch this swing space to landlords is we tell them that, okay, in the next 6 or 12 months, we may or may not find a tenant willing to sign a 5-year lease. And we've got really good companies, especially from the healthcare industry, needing swing space. So might as well accommodate them and generate revenue for their, for their buildings during that period where, where strategies are uncertain. So I think we will see more and more swing space opportunities arise in the next 1 or 2 months.
Yeah, Philip, I'm interested to know how that process of site evaluation now has changed versus pre-COVID, because I work very closely with Bobby of Lichu, because I take care of Sitel's expansion
Of course.
projects for
Yeah.
the countryside. And our typical cadence is that, like, we get together and then we go on a long road trip, we evaluate the site, and then we talk to the potential landlords, we talk to the local government units. In what way is that has that shifted now with the quarantine and all the different the different rules and regulations and ordinances that each of the municipalities has put in, pretty much not enabling that kind of usual site evaluation strategy?
We are okay, on a very basic level. I mean, information is still available digitally. So uh, um, we are putting together a survey of every city or most cities within Metro Manila and outside of Metro Manila, so that if you would want to expand or you need to be in certain locations, then we have a portal that you can peruse. Um, Number two is, I think, even the method of inspecting properties has to in some way adopt a digital format. We won't be able to enter buildings as often as we want to, uh, because we have to limit again interaction even with tenants in that building. So I think real estate developers will probably uh, adopt um, the use of video clips to show various parts of their building and maybe even the surroundings of the buildings. So I think it's going to be like that for the next 6 to 12 months, because travel is limited, and the only way for us to evaluate real estate right now is through video. So there will be a lot of adjustment going on in the next 1 or 2 months just to be able to adopt to the situation.
Yeah, there's a follow-up question from Bang posted in the chat box. So the because of all of these new requirements regarding safety and security, are you also seeing a shift in the in the fit of the real estate that are now being made available? Are there additional features, for example, that you're now advising your clients or your potential lessors to have or make available in their facility, so that it can be more attractive for a plug and play model for BPO players?
Sure, there has been a lot of like short videos on what developers are implementing in their buildings, and especially within the malls. And developers, you may notice when you go back to their buildings, have a lot of these measures in place. Like, for example, in all of the common areas, there are sanitizing centers or sanitation centers. People are required to wear masks. Uh, Companies are encouraged to have air filtration systems within
Mm-hmm.
their leased premises. We one of the things that we have to watch out is the type of air conditioning system that is available in a building. We must have Buildings must have a very efficient fresh air supply system, so that it helps in keeping the air clean and healthy within leased premises. This is probably one of the more mundane things that we are starting to notice now. Before, nobody would really pay attention to air quality, but I think this is something that we now have to look into. Now, you may have heard of LEED, which is
LED,
basically
yes. Yeah.
LED,
Yeah.
which is basically the responsible use of energy and materials. Now, it LEED has a counterpart called well building, which is espoused by the International Well Building Institute. It is now gaining prominence in various Asian countries, and one of the first developers to adopt that is Minarco.
Mm-hmm.
The Minarco Tower in Bonifacio Global City is one of the first well certified buildings. It's well is basically a set of practices that a building owner and tenants can implement in their workspace, just to improve health and well-being available in that space. we spend probably 80% of our time of our lives in the built environment, whether it's in the office building or whether it's in our in our homes. So uh, aspects of a building such as light are very important. Even the quality and the choices of food available in the pantries of offices
Yeah.
are looked at. On top of the usual sanitation mats, sanitation booths, and air filtration systems in premises. We would be we're collating a lot of this information. There's a lot going on right now, so it's difficult to make a recommendation of one particular system. But I think in time we will be able to settle down and probably identify one which applies to the Philippine setting.
Yeah. So because clearly it's still an ever evolving scenario, right? But I'm learning, so I just learned so much from what you said. So I've added now to the list of the things that I need to check when I look for potential locations for Sitel. Now let me just acknowledge one of the comments that was posted by Niklos Reyes, and this is great, no, because this is really how we want this forum to be, very interactive. So our participants, if you don't have questions, even just comments or maybe a little bit of sharing, please feel free to post that in our chat box, and I will make sure that I read that out. Okay, this is from Nicholas Reyes. We have two sites, which means that we can. Oh, by the way, Nicholas is from Connect Global Solutions Inc. We have two sites, which means that we can divide our employees and observe, execute physical and social distancing. We also built a project team to identify risk and facilitate safety and security initiatives. We also conducted a survey to consider employees with pre-existing conditions that made us decide to allow them to continue working from home, among other things. So I think this was he's sharing to the comments of Vida earlier, how they are adapting from an HR perspective to this new normal. So great sharing, Nicholas. Now, Nicholas also has a question, and this is now for Vida. When MECQ is lifted and GCQ is implemented, how do we convince our able employees, so those who are not considered under the law to be at risk, okay, to go to work? And what's the best approach to talk about their individual safety concerns? So I think just like many members of the HR community, Nicholas is concerned that some of the associates refuse to go to work, even when the companies have already a re-entry protocol. So what's your advice here, Vida? Or probably, if not advice, what are some of the best practice that you've seen other companies do to help assuage the fears of the associates about returning back to the sites?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's a very good question actually, and I think that more than I think it will not be fair or responsible from my end to say that I already know there is a best practice. Okay, so I would say there are good practices out there, there are better ones, but we are all in the stage of exploration and experimentation. But okay, from what I know, considering my clients and the people that I've also interviewed and consulted, and let me just acknowledge here also, I got insights from Pam Donato of Conduent, okay, our colleague in the HRCC, and also Ms. Grace Decena from Wipro. And I think that if I'm the HR leader and this is being tackled, okay, because this is already an issue that is confronting us, okay, so we now have people who have been enabled to work from home because there's connectivity, they're willing, and it can be done. There are also those whose scenarios and cases cannot enable them to work from home. Okay, so that's a different thing. I think that we have the prerogative as the employer and the company, the business, to really segregate compassion that is rightly placed and that is misplaced. Okay? I would say that to continue paying people who can work but are not willing to work, it's a different aspect. Okay, we have to be firm and decisive on what to do with them. So I think the no work no pay policy and principles should be invoked. There are also people who have the willingness to work, but they're not able to work because their area or their physical setup is not allowing them to work. So they're actually waiting for the time when we have to recall them. So we have a repopulation policy and strategy. So that means that we will observe the social distancing guideline. But knowing that, okay, we have people who can continue to work from home, our priority to recall are those people who are willing to work, they are high performers, they're high potentials, and their setup right now cannot allow them to work. So they will be given the priority to come back to the office as long as they're not identified as high risk. Okay? So I think that the ability to accommodate all interventions for all these categories of employees depend also on the financial stability of the company. If right now we see that we are about to incur losses, or we have actually incurred losses because of this crisis, which is unprecedented, we have extra expenses that were unplanned, I think that we have to be decisive. We have to save the business first and foremost. We have to identify the functions that are core to the business that will keep it continuing to operate, and those other functions that can be set aside right now. And I'm not saying that all organizations have that situation, but we have to be very, very keen on identifying those opportunities. So I think that as HR, as an HR leader, as HR business partner, we have to play business, not only support that will receive, global mandates, leadership directives, but we have to understand what will keep the business, what functions will keep the business going, and make it sustained and stay, because otherwise we will fold up and we will fade. So I think as an HR person, that is a very firm statement to make, but I think that we have to really segregate the emotion. Okay, it's good to be just, it's good to be fair, but we cannot be wrongly compassionate, because that is not good for the organization. I hope that helps somehow.
Okay, I just have a follow-up question there, Vida. So assuming that segregation has been done, you've identified those people who are really for work at home simply because they have the capability and the willingness to do so. And then you have identified also these groups of people that you are targeting for in-center work, whether because they're of their proximity to the site, or they don't have the ability to work from home, and thus an in-center model would be more suited for them. In cases like that, if you have these groups of people identified already, and yet one or two said, look, I'd love to, but I still do not feel safe.
Okay, so that aspect is also dependent on how well is the organization financially, okay, ready and capable to support interventions such as, increasing the HMO provisions. How are we going to help them, for example, if they are exposed to risk and they are also potential victims of this virus? They have to know that we are addressing the safety, okay, requirement of every employee. So for example, and I may not be speaking of PayPal alone because there are other clients that I support. Okay, so but from PayPal perspective, for example, there are a lot of leave benefits that can respond to this kind of a challenge. There are crisis leaves, there are sick leaves, employee relief fund, employee assistance programs. The HMO is also covering all those cases, but we have to make sure that they trust us on the interventions that we put in place. Okay, but
Correct.
that is not the case for every company. Okay, so if I am to talk about a company that is not similarly situated, okay, Heidi, I think the best way is to, instead of really addressing the employer-employee relationship drastically, because we know that this is a testing period, I think that what I can suggest or recommend is that those who cannot work for the meantime, I think we can invoke our prerogative to put some employees under floating status. Okay, so
Yeah.
floating status means they're still active in as part of our workforce, but we can invoke the no work no pay. We can continue to support them in terms of some benefits, but not all. But it is not a hopeless case for them. The 6 months floating period by law is legal and
Yeah.
legitimate and valid. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very helpful, Vida. Now, we pivot back to facilities. Julian Valenzuela, hi Julian, commented that he loves the back and forth between these two typically opposed, not necessarily, but just very different perspective and approaches. So now going back to you, Philip, Ben Coronel has a follow-up question here because when you presented earlier, you said that swing space is one of the options that are now available for potential tenants. So our question is, will this swing space have desktops and communication infra already in place? So really plug and play.
It's not plug and play. It's just really the basic real estate and then the chairs and tables. Now some floors in a building may have the computers and the telephones already intact, but the default is swing space is just really the basic real estate chairs and tables. A tenant will have to provide its own IT infrastructure.
Yeah, so then the other part of the challenge that needs to be solutioned is how, for example, potential tenants can deploy all of the hardware to these swing spaces, no, because of the transport limitation, also depending on the regulations set by the city. But that's good to know. Julian has another question for you, Philip, and goes like this: the IT and facility costs have moved to the employee to support them in their homes, and we are assisting our employees financially. Have you had success discussing concessions from landlords in terms of the downtime during ECQ? How do you recommend approaching that discussion as a partnership between tenants and landlords for long term? So have you experienced, for example, landlords saying, okay, rent free for the 2 months that we are on quarantine or something like that?
Yeah, okay. So we have experienced landlords give concessions on two levels, in particularly to BPO companies. Um, at the very least, several landlords have allowed their tenants to defer the payment of rent to a different time. Uh, some would in fact allow maybe a short rent-free period, and whatever that amount of rent that the landlord did not make is spread over the remainder of the lease. It would on very few in very few instances we have been able to obtain rent concessions from landlords, meaning an adjustment of the rent start date. There were some tenants who started fitting out their offices
Mm-hmm.
uh, at the same on the same week that ECQ or the lockdown was imposed. So the rent free construction period has been moved to 2 or 3 months after that. We've had some successes from requesting landlords to give those considerations to their tenants, but we have to keep in mind that landlords themselves have their own obligations to banks, and they have numerous other costs that they have to worry about. In fact, it's a lot more expensive to operate a building right now, because even the maintenance crew, the property managers, and the technicians in the building have to spend on protective equipment to be able to keep the building safe for for everybody. Some landlords also have a portfolio of the buildings, including malls and shopping centers, where they have, by today, lost billions of pesos because they gave rent free to their tenants. So it's not easy to give the same rent free um, to office tenants. So I read Julian's question in the chat box, and my suggestion is, although it's very difficult to get a rent concession from a landlord, you should always state your position and make your landlord uh, know what you are going through. Um, when one asks for concessions, it must be commensurate to the period that you had difficulty with. For example, if you're closed down for 2 months, I don't think we can ask for an adjustment of 6 months in rent. It just has to be um, kept within that period. So my recommendation is, just have an open dialogue with your landlord as to what you're going through, and let them come back to you with what they can give as relief.
Yeah. Philip, I'll have a follow-up question with to that, based on one of the questions that's posted on the chat box, because you
Yeah.
mentioned about PPEs, protective equipments, and Vida, feel free to chime in also, because I think this is somewhat HR related as well. So pencil case, I love your name here. The question is, the health of custodians and sanitation workers should also be prioritized, because they are the employees who maintain the cleanliness of the workplace. How do we ensure their health and safety as well? I think this is more for those, because most of us employ third-party providers, no, to do the cleaning and the to provide security services. Philip, what have you seen? Have you seen lessors that have really imposed or have implemented stricter measures in relation to this, and do they typically take care of that, or they give that, they charge that back in some form or fashion to the leases?
Right. Okay. For the people who manage buildings on a day-to-day, and these would be security guards, roving the common areas of a building, the receptionists at the reception counter on the ground floor. I mean, all of their masks, shoes, and everything they need to implement safety is paid for by the building owner. Obviously, this finds itself back to the tenant in the form of management dues. But and then in terms of what I have seen, uh, as additional support given by building owners is, they provide, or they organize the meals that are consumed by their building staff, so that staff won't have to worry about that. And
Mm-hmm.
the cleanliness is also somehow assured. And then, related to what Vida mentioned earlier, it's also very important that building owners, somehow assure the people taking care of their building that, if they gain a hospital expense, then they have somebody to back them up financially. So I think, in the next 6 months, we will see building owners providing more HMO coverage or health insurance type coverage to their own frontliners.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Vida. In relation to that, what are some of the practices that you've seen that companies or organizations have implemented in regards to their third party providers? Have you seen, for example, instances wherein the same benefits and protection that are afforded to the employees are also extended to the third-party service providers, particularly during the time of quarantine?
Yeah. Okay. That's a very good question also. Yeah. As the client providers, yeah, we shared with them our requirements. Okay. So we want more capable staffing, not only in terms of quantity, but the quality. So we want to make sure that the medical staff deployed to us by our service providers are the best in their teams. And we looked at qualifications, experience, people who can decide when there are emergencies on site, because we keep a certain size of a skeletal force there, right? So, but of course, it has a cost implication, and I think that that has been negotiated. Okay, and I think that we cannot ask for more support and service also from these businesses, although they are our partners, if we do not also help them, fund these kinds of support and services. So I think that in the site itself, where they are working and they are present, we provide all kinds of we provide uniform kind of support for direct employees and for the third party service providers. So if we say, yeah, we will shore the, they are included. Yeah, the things that we cannot probably shoulder is their own health, insurance coverage, but we can check on that with our partners so that we can make sure that what we are seeking from them is also commensurate to the and I think it's all a matter of negotiating. It's all a matter of setting expectations, but we have to work together for a common goal.
Yeah, thank you, Vida. And since I have you, I will also direct this next question to you. This one was posted by Roger. No, let me read exactly what he has posted. Post pandemic, the new normal will have more of our colleagues working from home for a long period of time. There will be those that will return to the sites, but there will be a portion that will work from home on a more permanent basis. Question is, aside from telco issues, what are the limits or caveats to working from home? When, where, and when is it effective, and when is it not advisable to implement? I think you gave a couple of the pointers earlier already, Vida. No, like for example, you need to check whether they have the capability to work from home from internet bandwidth, etc. But apart from those, are there other considerations when organizations are deciding who should work from home and who should not be working from home?
I think we have our own respective models in looking at, okay, for example, are these roles and jobs and functions going to continue being time focused and time driven, or are we going to shift our mindset and say, yeah, we can deal with the absence physically, but make sure that we have more stringent measures of performance in terms of outcomes and results? So I'll give a particular instance that is applicable to us, Heidi. So for example, HR, okay, HR business partners and HR leaders like us. So how is the change going to happen? In the first place, the profile of effectiveness and success will never be the same. Okay? When we used to say we are a support group, we are there for operations, we help them get their agents engaged, etc. Now we cannot be by their side all the time. But how can we truly be valuable as HR professionals to them? I think that we have to be good at problem solving. We have to be very good critical thinkers. design thinkers, as you also mentioned earlier. So there are problems at hand. For example, now we are facing that this challenge of uh, assessing whether work from home is driving productivity. Okay, but we cannot talk about anecdotes, right? So
Mm-hmm.
why not lead project studies or case studies wherein we can compare, right? Because we have 3 months, almost 3 months in the making already. So we know that the variables are different, but maybe we can stabilize a little, get together, partner with our business excellence teams and our data scientists in the organization, and let's see what drives the metrics, what drives the performance. And so let me take this opportunity, Heidi, for example, for us HR. Um, I think that what I see that is lacking in us right now is that we seem to wait for mandates and directives, especially if we are a global company, okay? Because we are used to decisions being made at the global level. However, right at this time, I think in different cultures and localities or and geographies, we experience firsthand the real problems. So I think assertiveness have to be enhanced, okay? There has to be a very good balance of democratic participative decision making and also the autocratic kind that is top down. I don't think our global leaders will understand what we are suffering and what we're experiencing if we just keep ourselves, silent and being implementers rather than policy makers as well and also decision makers. So it is a must that we are in the Mancom. I know, Heidi, that some HR leaders are not seated there, unlike us, so that they can hear us. But I think we have to push, okay, because we have the insights, we have the real time issues, real time challenges that we understand best than our global counterparts. So I think a very good combination of global alignment and localization is also called for during this time. Not all solutions can work for Manila and still work the same for Jamaica or the
Yeah.
US. So I think that local leaders should be heard at this time. So for HR leaders, I challenge everyone, I encourage everyone. Okay, I think that let's look at the VUCA framework. Okay, we should all be guided by that. Let us be confident about what we know. Let us not wait for our company to develop us. I think that our own learning and development at this time is also highly dependent on our own initiative. So don't wait for learning and development programs to come to us. We can initiate a lot of things right now. This is the best time to really see who is going to shine, who is more effective, who is most successful, etc. And I think that any company will welcome us when we join that very active arena of problem solving and decision making.
Yeah, I agree with you, Vida. And Beng here, I think, summed it up really, really well in the chat box. She said, I guess it all boils down to outcome-based management in deciding whether a person can work from home or not. Now, pivot again. Philip, with all of these discussions about swing spaces and social distancing requirements inhibiting the ability of the of lessors and BPO players to maximize the space that we've already leased. How do you see now the changes in the supply of commercial real estate over the next 2 to 3 years as a result of the pandemic? And I think you have something to show us, right, in relation to this?
Yes, we can use the slides that I prepared if it's ready.
Yeah.
Um,
Badgie, can we pivot there?
anyway, while the slides are being
It's up already, Philip.
okay. Well, okay. For some reason, I can't see it. This is a minute. Okay, there. So okay, this may look like a very busy slide for those whose first time for for those who did time to see it. But before the pandemic, we were expecting almost 1.5 million square meters of office space to be completed in 2020. Now, what does 1.5 million square meters look like? Uh, the entire Bonifacio Global City community probably has about 2 million square meters of office space. Ortigas probably has 2 million square meters of office space also. So we were expecting uh, buildings almost of the size of Ortigas or Fort Bonifacio to be completed this year. But because of delays in construction, this has been reduced to 44%. So we're only seeing about 800,000 plus square meters of office space completed. That's still a large amount of office space, and so there's a decrease in supply in 2020. But this is kind of like just pushed back to 2021, and from that period on, everything normalizes. But what is more important to note is that there are only a few PEZA registered buildings available this year. So for those who are not familiar with PEZA, it's the Philippine Economic Zone Authority, and they grant tax incentives to both to qualified locators. So per our most recent count, there are only 5 new PEZA registered buildings that will become available in 2020, amounting to about 60,000 square meters of office space. So I think we all have to come up with a renewed effort to lobby to the government, for PEZA to allow accrediting more buildings. And I think I'm starting to hear more of that in webinars conducted uh, by our finance secretary. Next slide. So these two lines show what the leasing activity was in 2019. So that is the blue line on top of the orange line, which represents what leasing activity looks like right now. Obviously, if you go to the area second quarter, leasing activity is down. We would have seen probably. I mean, last year we saw almost 500,000 square meters leased in the same period. Now it's down to a very low number. But hopefully, when mobility increases, all of that leasing activity will pick up towards the end of the year, and we will still end up with maybe 800,000 to 1 million square meters of office space leased. So there is that temporary 6-month delay in supply coming online, but that is also matched by a slowdown in demand. So the supply and demand balance still remains. We'll come back to normal maybe towards the end of this year. Okay.
Okay, thank you, thank you very much, Philip. I just look at my watch here, and I just realized that it's already 2:20, so we only have 5 minutes left to wrap up our session. As I was telling, as Beng and Roger and I were talking before we started this. We said, time flies so fast when you're having fun, when you're engaged in a discussion with colleagues and friends. And I think that's very true insofar as this panel discussion is concerned. So I'll probably one more question, which I will throw to you, Vida, and this has something to do with mental wellness. Uh, Within the HR field, although we've started talking about holistic view of well-being, mental wellness has really, I think, and I've observed, have not really been at the forefront of the services that we provide to our associates. But now, given all of the uncertainties, it has come to be one of the top priorities that we need to assist associates with. What's your thinking around this, and in what way do you think companies can help associates deal mentally and psychologically with everything that's going on around us.
Okay. Yeah. So Heidi, that's a very, very critical and valid point. Okay, so I think that when we say we as leaders or we in HR are supporting our employees in terms of mental wellness, yeah, that's easier said than done. Okay, so I think that my suggestion would be let's make sure that we have a team in the organization that can do this. This kind of role requires a different set of expertise, yeah, maybe a different kind of educational background also and experience. So let us not pretend, okay? Let us not pretend.
Mm-hmm.
If that expertise is not there, we have to hire people or leverage on the availability of partners and service providers outside the company. Let's make sure that we get the
Mm-hmm.
expertise for that, okay? So if we have that, I think that we also have to get the necessary funding to support that because this is not free. This is not going to be free, okay? And we have to also invest and fund assessment tools and diagnostics, okay? That will help us determine who's the employee that needs it most or who is the employee that needs it appropriately. We cannot base our judgments or our perceptions on our opinions. Like, for example, if somebody keeps on whining, how do we call that employee? Does he have a behavioral problem? Maybe, but everybody has challenges right now. And maybe that is not, an adequate basis for identifying employees who have challenges. Okay, so how do we do it? Uh, PayPal has a very good program for that. There is an employee assistance program globally. Okay, I know that Wipro and Conduent also, they have global functions that lead this kind of initiatives. So there is initially the availability of a team. It's a function. Secondly, it should be financially supported. Okay. Thirdly, also, I think that we should have a very good way of identifying those who have problems. Okay. Problems that cannot be in our hands, we cannot solve. So those problems that we can control and we can manage within our premises, within our own capabilities, I think that those are the only ones that we can solve. So I think that to cut the story short, what I'm trying to say is we cannot pretend that we can solve all the problems that are happening or that are being encountered by all our employees. So I think even during critical times like this, it is still our management prerogative as well to segregate those employees who are contributing to the business. Are they okay? Are they not okay? Because there are solutions for every group. Let us not
Mm-hmm.
waste time also for those who cannot continue contributing to the organization, but not at the expense of, as I said earlier, humanity and justice, but make sure also that our compassion and that our funding goes to the right interventions and the right people.
Yeah, thank you for that, Vida. So in this particular case, I think the build, buy, and borrow principle in talent management still applies. Now, if you don't have it internally, you buy it or you borrow it. Because particularly in this critical times where speed to execution is very critical, we may not have all the necessary resources nor the time to build it on our own. So thank you very much. But there are actually several other questions posted in the chat box that unfortunately, due to time constraints, we will no longer be able to accommodate. But I'm sure HIMAP has other sessions lined up in the coming weeks. So those will definitely be answered. And I'll do a little bit of a shameless plugging here because a couple of the questions that were posted really had to do with labor provisions as well as legalities surrounding the different employee situations within COVID situation. Next week, there will actually be an e-forum sponsored and organized by the HR Council of CCAP, and the theme is going to be administrative and legal remedies during COVID. So you may that's just like the HIMAP session. It's free for everyone. So if you wanna attend, just feel free to contact CCAP, and an announcement will also be made there. So team, the overall theme is clear. I repeat, there is no going back. The COVID-19 crisis is not only disruptive to every company, it has created a big reset. We are very grateful for the selfless sharing of our panelists, Philip and Vida. Thank you very much. I, as a moderator, definitely learned so much from you as well. So, to formally close our session this afternoon, may we call on Ben Coronel? Ben?
Okay, thank you very much, Heidi. It really has been a very productive session for all of us. So I thank you, Philip, as well as Vida. I guess you framed it so well. Your revealed acronym resonates well with us, and it also allows us to focus on the two well concerns that we have right now on the personal side. So, which were actually tackled by Vida, as well as the real estate and space side. So in terms of the HR side, well, Vida really worked on all the different employee life cycle, telling us what are the options and the challenges as well that are coming in based on the new things that are being announced right now. It's amazing that every 2 weeks or every certain amount of time we get a new term from ECQ to GCQ to MECQ. So and each announcement would come in with different complications to what we have been practicing. You know? So I guess in that particular sense, creativity as well as our ability to adapt would be very much required right now in this particular time. On the other hand, on the real estate, I think Julian uh, stated it very well that this is the only time we're in. We have the HR side and the space side come face to face because there are a lot of questions like from the employer side right now. If my work from home has been able to work, then why should I go back to my situation where I pay a lot in terms of rental, space rental? Because if you look at the expenses of a typical employer, number one would be personnel, number two would be space, the rental as well as the infrastructure. So I think there are lots of employers thinking whether we continue with the work from home. But Philip made it easy for all of us in terms of deciding because right now they are offering a lot of options for us. So the swing space or the pop-up space that I guess the DG Plaza mentioned in our previous session. So you have the hub and spoke as well as the uh, well moving towards the balik provincia model, no? So establishing some sites across the entire nation. So it also allows us some flexibility. What works well with your employees, what works well with your clients, because admittedly, security is a primary requirement from our clients. So that has to be a main concern for all of us. And typically, an employer has three basic priorities: the safety and wellness of its people. Second is really the client experience, the customer experience. And third, of course, in terms of being able to sustain the health of your company. So in all of those complications that we face, I think there's one thing that we need to have in mind, that in all cases, in all decisions, we have to have the heart and mind really looking at the different sides and in making out the decision, what works well would be a play between the heart decision and the mind decision. So again, we'll have the 1 o'clock Friday habit every every Friday. So as Heidi mentioned, there would be another session, and hopefully you would be there to again hear out our authorities and panel speakers, so that we can have some clarity in terms of all these issues that we now face. So again, thank you very much and have a good afternoon and a good weekend. Good day.
Th-
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great long weekend.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank
Bye-bye.
you to all
Thank
our
Bye.
you.
panelists.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Thank,
Hyde. Thank you, Philip and Vida.
thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you to all
Thank you, Judy.
attendees.
Thank you.
Yes,
Bye.
thank
Thank you,
you.
Haji. Thank you, Ms. Vida. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, you too.